Hi everyone, this is Niladri. Welcome to session 24 of Project Management Professional Training Series. So let's dive in and let's see what we are going to go through in session 24. So in session 24, we are going to talk about project monitoring and control. We are going to basically check the what and why of it and also spend some good amount of time into the key elemental concept in project monitoring phase, which is change management. Now, monitoring and control, you expect questions from the exam, and definitely most of the questions in the exam will be from change management. So have a full focus on that. Be very thorough with that. Know the sequence of steps in the change management, and practice good amount of questions on this topic. Okay, from the reference book which you have purchased by now, go through this topic quite a few times, at least 3 times, to ensure that you know this concept well. Okay, in the exam, the questions on the change management will not be easy, and they will be something like from medium complex, or let's say, to super complex. But definitely they will not be like super easy, like some bullet choice there. Okay, so spend some time on that, and we are also going to spend some good amount of time in the lesson 24 on change management. Now, so far, till lesson 23, we have spent a very good amount of time in the planning, right? And I wanted to do that. That was done deliberately because I wanted to spend with you guys a lot of time in the planning and go through each of the knowledge areas which are cutting in planning: your scope, time, cost, quality, stakeholder management, so on and so forth. The only thing which is left is integration management, which I will cover in lesson 25. Now, point is, why do we give so much of stress in planning? Because planning is the big fat layer, and most of the questions in the exam will be coming from planning. And if you have understood the sequence of the steps in planning, trust me, you are in a very good position to say that, okay, I have prepared well for the exam. Okay. It's something similar to the old adage that we have got, that, plan to or fail to plan is plan to fail, right? So we need to ensure that we are having a very good structured kind of a knowledge in the project planning. Now, one question may come up in your mind is that, why did I jump project execution? Because we are straight away coming into project monitoring and control, right? So project execution is something which is very simple. We don't have to spend too much time into that. Execution is just whatever you have written in the project plan in the planning phase, you're going to follow that. You're going to execute that. um three things. Okay, simple things like, when does the hiring happens in the project, or when are the people plugged into the project? They are all done in the execution phase. You might be thinking that in the project execution phase, how can we hire when the hiring should be happening in the planning phase, right? In reality, not, because PMP thinks that you are doing all the projects as a matrix program manager or a project manager, and you're not a functional manager. So people will be plugged into your project uh, from the execution phase. You can do the resource planning in the planning phase, but people will definitely be plugged in the execution phase. And that's why they say that hire the people or build the team during the execution phase. And again, people will also be unplugged from your project when their activity or their work is done. Okay. The other element of the execution stage is rewards and recognition. That is again done in this particular process group, because once you are doing your work, you are in the in-flight stage of your project. That point of time, if someone is doing extremely well or did some work very very nicely, then you will be rewarding that person. That's why we say that we do not have too much elements in the execution phase to discuss apart from these 2 points. One is reward recognition, and one is the hiring. And you can definitely have a go through from your reference books if you have purchased one. Just have a quick go through. One single read is enough. You do not get normally too many questions on the project execution phase, but you will definitely get questions on project monitoring and control. So let's start off and find out, what is project monitoring and control. So, as the name says, the name itself is kind of meaningful, right? Monitoring and control means that you monitor something and you control it. Now, let's say, when or how does it happen? So, there is no gap between execution and the monitoring and the control phase. Like, let's say initiation phase, we are developing the project charter, right? And then in the planning phase, we are developing the project management plan. We are not going to execute the project in a waterfall method till the time your project management plan is being signed off or it's ready, right? But when you're coming into execution, then immediately the monitoring and the controlling phase will also kick in, will also be turned on. Why? Because remember that you execute as per the project plan, which has got the defined scope and the defined schedule, and the defined, the cost and all that stuff, right? Now, you have to check as a PM, is there any kind of deviation from that when you execute the project? It can be a quality deviation, it can be a schedule deviation, and your job will be throughout to correct the course of the project as per the agreed scheduled timelines and the cost. So remember this word called correct course. That is the main job of the project monitoring and control. Take corrective actions to ensure the project is on the path as we uh, agreed in the beginning. Now, here we also have to understand um, the color codings of the project when it comes to the health of the project. A project health is green when uh, when the project is having all the when the cost and the schedule of the project is going as per planned. Okay, a project is amber when the project day one is at risk due to a deviation in schedule or cost or something else, and you have to take a corrective action as a PM to ensure the project is back on track. The corrective action can be as simple as maybe adding more people, like a fast tracking or compression kind of technique, or can be more complex, like trying to get some changes here and there. Okay, now um, if the project is red, that means that the project cannot be brought to track in the original agreed day one with corrective actions. The project needs to be re-baselined and move forward. Okay. It can also be terminated if the business thinks that we do not have any need for this project and there is no return of investment on this project. So corrective action is basically the key word when we are talking about the project monitoring and control. Now, what are the key items which are being monitored in this particular phase? First and foremost, scope creep, right? If you're in a CIS day one project, imagine you're in the execution stage, and that point of time, the business tells you, you know what, we need one more AV room, or you know what, we need one more lab. And you're like, how do we do that? Because there is impact on the day one, right? These kind of things are called the scope creep. So you have to avoid the scope creep. Okay, you have to tell this is not possible in this project. And if you want to do that, then probably we have to readjust the day one by taking the agreement from the project sponsor. Staying within budget. You have to stay within budget, which is your CPI. So we have got a nice performance metric, which is called CPI, on which you can check if the project is within, above, or beyond the budget. Keeping to the schedule, which is nothing but your SPI. And then finally, managing risk. So you will recall that when we discussed about risk, then we discussed about you need to have to identify the risk and analyze the risk. And finally, you come to an option where we are going to have the risk response strategy for that risk, like, avoid, mitigate, transfer, share, so on, right? So here is the time when you're going to manage any risk. So risk management is in full force when you are into the monitoring and control. Now, project monitoring and control, just to give you a idea how it works, let me just drag a annotation here. Uh, Give me 1 second. Yes. So monitoring and the control, let's say whatever you planned, scope here, you planned it, you're going to monitor the scope here. Schedule, you planned it here, you're going to monitor the schedule. Cost, you planned here, you're going to monitor the cost, right? In execution, you don't have scope, time, and cost because they are part of planning and the monitoring and control. Quality, of course, you will check it if it's going as per the standard quality which you like had planned in the beginning. The resources, of course, you will check. Communication, you will check. Risk, you will check. Procurement you will check, like in your case, it's very simple for CIS day one. If the hardware has been delivered on site, you're going to check that, right? And also your stakeholders, you will inform them through communications, through various kind of status, reports, or weekly reports or monthly reports that, hey, this is how the project is going. So that's why we say that the monitoring and control has got almost all the elements, not almost, but actually all the elements which you are seeing in the planning. So whatever you have planned, that is coming into your monitoring and control. Okay. So let me quickly remove this and let's move forward. All right. Now let's come to the key piece of the monitoring and control. Okay. On this one, you expect a good amount of questions in the exam. And this is not a difficult concept at all. In fact, it's a very easy concept. But if you know this and if you have practiced this, then nothing like that. All right. First thing first, you know that change management, the word change is not a process. I mean, it is a process, but not an event, right? So change is not actually an event in the project timeline. It's a process through which you manage the changes. And if you are a PM for some time, you will always know that so many requests of change will be floating in the project, right? Now, what's the problem? If you do not have a change management, or if you're not going to address to the changes, it can come from the business. It can also come during the execution. You probably find that, hey, a couple of your things are not as actually working as they should be. Probably uh, once you do the quality control, you find that a few of your Wi-Fi APs which you install for the day one, they are not coming up with the proper speeds, right? So these kind of, so you have to immediately find out how to track it, how to close it. Now these are the changes which is happening in the negative direction, right? So you have to ensure that you address these changes, and if you do not address them, they will be flooded and your project will be led to failure. So any kind of change in a project, okay, I'm not only talking about any defect inspection, but any kind of change, it can be the request for a scope, time or cost change or a risk management or anything. These kind of changes must be assessed, evaluated, and implemented. They are not done on a fly, right? Like in the suddenly, one fine morning, like Monday morning, the business comes and says that I would like to add one lab to the program. Sorry, I forgot to tell you in the beginning, but now we think we should be having one more lab in the current building, which was not in the initial scope. So you do not immediately say yes to that. You assess that change, you evaluate that change, and you implement that. Now, when you evaluate a change, what is the key thing which you evaluate the change on? The impact. What is the impact of this change? Is it going to shift the day one? Is it going to add more dollar value in the cost? Is it going to have more risk into the project? Some schedule changes? All those impacts has to be closely checked, and then and only then you can say that, you know what, now I know the impact is high or low. And now we'll come to the format also where I will tell you that, how these changes are being approved and finally implemented, because the PM on his own will not only just assess and say impact and they will say yes or no, right? The PM has to go to somebody to ensure that these changes are approved. So let's see. On a high level view, this is the process, the 4 steps which we do to make any kind of changes in an in-flight project. Remember, you have not considered this in the beginning, and that's why they're coming to you as a change. So the project is already in flight. You are trying to do some changes while the project is in flight. First thing first, prevent the root cause of changes. Always try to prevent if there is a root cause of any changes. Why? Because if you're not going to prevent the root cause of changes, then it will flood your project with lot many changes which you will not be able to handle. Okay, the root cause sometimes will be as simple like maybe a manufacturing problem. Okay, let's say a Cisco device you got on the floor, I mean, got on the data room. It's not powering on, or it's not giving out the proper output which you expect and you go for a return of the device. So those kind of things are the root causes, right? You find the device is faulty, right? Sometimes it also can be a design problem. Maybe you designed something in the beginning and later on you found that, hey, the version of this particular switch or the firmware version of this particular Wi-Fi controller is not the one which we wanted. So you prevent that from the root instead of addressing them one by one. The more you prevent these changes from the root, the more it will help you to smoothly run the project. Now, identify the change. You identify all the changes which are being requested to you. Okay. And then what I said, you look at the impact of the change. You assess the change and you find out what is the impact of this change. Finally, when you are like, yeah, the impact looks high, then you are going to create a change request that we are going to just go in the next slides. But change request is something where you are going through a formal process of getting a change being discussed and analyzed and looking at the impact and finally getting approved or rejected. So welcome to Perform Integrated Change Control or PICC. Now, this is one of the key elements when we talk about the integration management key knowledge area. And thankfully, we are going to cover it here in detail. So PICC is the official method, or we will say the de facto standard of PMP through which we are going to manage any kind of changes. First thing first, the PM gets a change. Let's say uh, add one more AV room while the project is in flight. Then you assess the change. If I add one more AV room, do I have got the hardware with me? Have I already ordered it? Okay, have I got like something in surplus, right? If I don't have it, then do I have to order it now? And if I want to order it now, then do I need more money? Have I got the money, or do I need to again go back to my sponsor and ask for more money? And even if I get the money and even if I raise, let's say, the purchase order, what is the lead time? If my project day one is October 1st, or let's say November 1st, am I going to get the hardware within the stipulated time with all the purchase order, the approvals in place? Okay. So that kind of a mental map you have to do, like you assess the change and then you also look for options which I told you right now, like have we got any kind of new AV device which is not used, or an unboxed kind of AV device which was brought for some project, but for that project the day one is being shifted to the future, so we probably can use it now and we can raise a purchase order and backfill that particular hardware. So looking for all these options, your change is approved or rejected. How? You basically go to a change control board. I will come to that again in next slide. So the change control board is an official body or a committee to whom you will place your changes on the table, and they will go through it, they will assess it, and then finally they will approve it or reject it. If it's approved, great. If it's getting to be rejected or going to be rejected, or it's kind of just like scratched out, then you have to go back and inform to the business or the customer that uh, sorry to say that this particular change is not being accepted right now. Probably it will be in the next project. Okay. Whatever is the status of the change, you have to update the change of, I mean, the status of the change in the change control system or CCS. Change control system is nothing but a log file where you log all the changes and you tell it approved or rejected, which date it got approved or rejected, and finally some comments there, right? If the change is approved, then you definitely have to adjust your PM plan, your project management plan, because that's where your original plan is. So you have to go and make the changes there. All the project documents which you have got, your quality control document or whatever changes are supposed to be there, you apply the changes in all the documents and all the baselines. And finally, you make the changes. Okay. Now, regarding baselines, I want to call out a very critical thing. Now, when I talk about project baseline changes, baseline here means scope, time, cost. If you remember that triple constraint triangle, which I showed somewhere in the beginning of this training course. So scope, cost, time are the three project baselines, which we say. Okay. Now, if you want to do any kind of changes on scope, cost, or time while the project is in flight, it has to be signed off by the project sponsor. Okay, you just cannot take it to change control board and they will say, yeah, yeah, this all looks good, and they sign it off. No, that cannot happen. Scope, cost, time, any kind of changes, uh, the project sponsor must sign off because it's a key baseline change request. Again, most of the time, for your knowledge, chances are very high that the project sponsor himself or herself will be a part of the change control board. We'll come to that in detail in next slide. So you communicate all the changes to stakeholders. Once you have done the changes, like, hey, we are going to add one more AV room and that's been approved. Great. Now you communicate that change to all these stakeholders in your weekly report or monthly reports, right? And also in your PM tools and all that. Finally, you manage the project to the new revised PM plan. You're not going to manage it as per the old PM plan. If there is a new something has been added or modified, you go and manage the project and control it as per the new plan which is being approved. Okay. All right. Now let's talk a little bit about change control board. Okay, change control board is a formal, like a committee or a body in the organization or in the company, where we have got maybe the people who are a part of the change control board, maybe the project manager himself, some subject matter experts, maybe the portfolio manager, sometimes the customer also, and sometimes the sponsor as well. It can be anybody who have got a good understanding of project management and a good overview about the entire portfolio. What is the work of the change control board? Basically, it evaluates a change request. A CR comes into picture. CR through any form, maybe an email or a ticket or a SIM, is being raised to you or your team, and is being told that, hey, you know what, we need some changes here. Then you take it forward to change control board. They are the team who are responsible to review and to analyze the change request. They will see, okay, what kind of the change is this? What is the impact? And impact, is it going to impact the day one or the budget approved and so on? Based on all that, deep dive into the changes, they are going to approve or reject the change. So it's completely in hand of the CCB. It's a formal committee, and the way and the reason we would like to do it in the form or through the CCB is majorly because they will not be having any bias for this project. If I leave the change explicitly to the project manager, chances are very high the project manager will start rejecting all the changes, because ideally, in an ideal world, the project manager will not like to see any changes in the project after the plan is approved, right? We all don't want to see any kind of changes, right? But in real life, maybe you need a change. It's a must. And maybe that will shift the day one to a week or two or a month. And if that's okay with the sponsor, we have to go with that. Okay. Or maybe it will increase the budget. If the sponsor signs off and says, you don't worry, I will arrange the budget for you. Great. Then the change has to be approved. So that's why we say that it's an unbiased kind of a committee. And we are going to also make sure the customer himself or the PM from the customer's endpoint or the sponsor, they are a part of the change control board. So when I was working in IBM for Royal Bank of Scotland, I remember in the change control board, they used to have the delivery project manager from Royal Bank of Scotland. One from IBM and one from Royal Bank of Scotland. They both used to be there on that particular project change control board. Okay, just to ensure that there is no kind of things are happening which should not happen. There is no bias action or anything. And this team's job is to approve or to reject the change request. Okay. And like I said, the CCB may include the PM, SME, customer sponsor, uh, or anybody or everybody who are having good knowledge in project management and that particular portfolio. All right. Now let's wrap up. So like we said, change is a process. Change is not an event. Change management is not an event in the project. Okay. It's a process. Okay. Prevention is the first step in change management, and that is because to avoid too many changes. Project baseline changes, which I told you, will need sponsor approval. And that is in the PMP world. In the real world, you may not do that always, but PMP exam world, it's super clear that if you want a baseline change when the project is in flight, and baseline means scope, cost, time, then you need to have the sign off from the sponsor. Okay. In real world, it may be just a customer buy-in. Like you go to the customer, I mean, the customer is requesting for a change, or you himself or your team has found some change has to be done, and once the change is getting formalized or getting into the approval or the rejection stage, you can go to the customer and say that, is it okay for to get the change? It will be having this like benefit. Your project may slip, or we have to re-baseline your project by maybe a couple of weeks. Customer says yes, then you go with that. And change control board may also have the customer as the part of the committee, like I discussed. All right, with that, we came to the end of the session. I hope you all liked it, enjoy it. Thank you for watching. Have a great day and a great time.